Ask the Podcast Coach for January 6th, 2018.
Let's get ready to podcast.
It's a new year. It's a new Saturday. It's really cold. It's time for Ask the Podcast Coach, where you get your podcast questions answered live. I'm your host, Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting.com. And joining me right over there, also freezing his took us off in Nebraska, is the one and only Jim Cullison from theaverageguy.tv. Jim, how's it going, buddy?
Good. Happy Saturday morning to you, Dave. So cold, I grew a beard just to keep my face warm. And it's freezing out here, but only in the Northern Hemisphere. For our Australian listeners, New Zealand, South Africa, wherever you might, South America, wherever it might be in the Southern Hemisphere, enjoy the summer because it is super cold in the Northern Hemisphere right now.
Yeah, my ex-stepdaughter lives in Augusta, Georgia, and sent a picture of herself standing in the backyard with snow.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's what you get. You thought you were moving away from it.
No, record lows in the South here in the United States this last week as a little Arctic plunge. So stay inside, podcast, stay warm. That's the important thing. Make sure your ears and fingers are covered so you don't get frostbite.
Oh man, it's the thing. My door, the way it works is when it gets cold. I don't know if I always thought things got smaller in the cold, but my lock, kind of the door, to make a long story short, when I go to turn the key, it's like I'm always worried I'm going to break the key off because you really have to. Yeah. And it's one of those things where you have to pull. If I pull the door and turn the key, it's fine. Well, in the process of doing this while you're holding groceries, right? I'm like, screw this, and I just take off my gloves and just like, I don't know, 10 seconds. First of all, grabbing a doorknob that's been outside for ever. I was just like, oh man, my fingers are just like, you feel like they're just gonna shatter when
it's cold at 20 below with the wind chill. Your fingers can freeze in 45 seconds. Like you can have frostbite in 45 seconds. So super important. There's no podcasting related. This doesn't relate to podcasting in any way. But make sure it's been a while. The winters have been pretty mild, and we haven't seen these kinds of temperatures in a while. Just make sure you're covered when you're going outside. Put a hat on, get some gloves. It's always good.
Well, we have a fun question. We might as well talk about
let's talk about it.
The elephant in the room. Let me see if we have some. Here we go. We'll get some music here.
Turn it up a little bit.
Okay. Yeah. Is that better? Yeah. Darwin Dave asks, which actually fits very well with his podcast. Darwin Dave, of course, the Dealing with My Grief podcast. This morning at 8:42 a.m. Little Bernie the cat from the Bernie the Cat show has gone to the big litter box in the sky. Make a long story short, a week ago, the doctor found a tumor. He'd been pooping and peeing on everything in my house. That's one of the things I get to do today. I'm going to have carpet again. My entire living room is covered in a blue tarp. And last night, my ex-wife came down with my ex-stepson. We went out, had pizza, and had a little Bernie party. And he was starting to... he was walking funny. And then yesterday, boy, this is fun conversation. He just pooped all over himself. Oh. And if you want to have fun, and then he wouldn't let me clean it up. So it dried. Isn't this fun conversation? Oh. So I'm in the shower and Bernie's like, hey, dude, you're in my bed. I love to sleep in the shower. So I hear this outside of the night. You know what? So without thinking about it, I'm like, I'm bringing the cat in the shower, because I'm going to see if I can't rinse some of this stuff off or whatever. So I grab him, I pick him up. And at first, because cats don't really like water, I don't know if you know this or not. At first, he's like, hey, his feet are like, whoa, what do you do? What do you do? And then I was like, no, I'm just going to get the bottom half of you, And he just had this look at me like, seriously? You're going to try to give your cat a bath? Like, really?
Haven't you heard?
Yeah, and it didn't work. So then I had then the joy of trying to dry a cat. That wasn't really crazy about that. And that didn't go well. And so I hopped back into the shower to now clean me off, at which point the cat got in the litter box. So a half wet cat, it was a mess. Yikes. But so it's really weird because I've now had to put down 3 animals, and it's really weird because 1 minute they're there and then it's literally like a light switch. You just see their eyes just go, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, they're gone. It's weird because it's like they evaporate.
I don't know if I could watch that. That's so hard. It's funny. As soon as you started talking about this, my cat walked in the room, like came in, sat down. So they must know. I think the cats are connected.
Yeah, that's it.
It's always, what's interesting as we think about this related to podcasting, Dave, you started, Bernie has his own show.
Yeah.
Well, so what are you going to do?
Well, I made the joke, and it's actually true. He's like Tupac. We have a lot of recordings in the can. They'll be released post, it would be like John Lennon. Here's John from 67 farting into a can. It's like, put it out there. It's like, So are you gonna do a final show? Probably. Yeah, I'll have to go back, and I actually made a little video this morning of different times when I've come. There's one when I came home from Podcast Movement, and literally he let out the longest, as we affectionately refer to them as, frere. He just did this whole just forever. So I made this little thing, and so it's it's weird because I deal when I get into a death situation, I do two things. One, lots of sarcasm. B, lots of work. So this morning I've got this, and then at 1, 2, 3, I have my first session of podcasting in 6 weeks. Man, is that a fun? There's going to be a lesson, not today, but there'll be a lesson sometime in the School of Podcasting about that. If you want to try something, because if it doesn't work, people will tell you why it doesn't work, and then you can create that product. Oh man, did I get a lot of good feedback on that? Yeah, so I think somewhere, and then at 4:00 football comes on. So probably around like 10 o'clock when I don't have to clean the litter box, is when it'll kind of sink in.
Yeah, well, it's good to grieve over that. I think, pets can be near and dear, and they're a big part of our lives. We've had our cat now. He's sitting there guarding the entrance for 13 years, I think. And my boys, they only know him. Yeah. Is part of the family, and there are times they come over. Sometimes they come over just to see the cat. We're like, hey, and they go right to the cat, and we're like, oh, well, I guess we see where we fall in the pecking order. Yeah. But I think it's an important thing to grieve through. It does give you a little experience in closing down a podcast after a death. I think we don't see a lot of this now, but I think we're going to see more of this in the industry over time as podcasters get older. And they pass away. I had a podcast host at Gallup pass away, 18 months into a podcast, and we had to adapt. We had a 34, the themes, we have 34 talent themes in the Strengths Finder, this Clifton Strengths tool. And we were 24 episodes in. And on a Saturday afternoon, Kurt was out mowing his lawn, and that was the last we see. He had a massive heart attack and passed away. And so what do you do with a 34-part series that's only 24 parts in?
Ooh.
And so we felt like it was important for his legacy to finish those up. And so we actually had his peers at work finish. Each one picked one of the 10. Mm-hmm. And then each one of them did it in the style that they kind of to really kind of honor him. And it was very, very touching. It's an incredible season. It was our first season, which is how do you follow up a season like that, right? When we did a second season to it. We've actually done 3 and we're planning 4 right now. So the show goes on, but I think you have to build some contingency plan into your podcast, not just for death, but you're going to lose hosts, you're going to lose co-hosts, things are going to change. I don't think as podcasters, we think about that change enough. Even if you have a plan and you never have to implement it. I've been thinking about this with life insurance, and, my father-in-law passed away, and I think it's really good just to kind of plan some things out. The other thing, Dave, we can talk about is I think it's important to plan for your success, even if you haven't had it yet. So when you reach 5,000 or when you reach 10,000 or when you reach 50,000, what are you going to do? Like, how are you going to do things different? Yeah. And I think it's good to have a plan and to think through, what happens when I'm successful.
Yeah, that's something that I've thought about. I know Daniel J. Lewis has told me he has a file that's like, if I die kind of thing. And he says, I'm listing you as the person that's going to put together my I'm dead plan, and it involves, I think, rehosting his stuff on, I don't know if it's on, what's the one thing, the free thing that everybody uses?
For
something archive.org.
Archive.org. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe putting his stuff there and a couple other things. And but I it's one of those things that's always like, I need to do that. I need to create a if I'm dead kind of thing. And it's always on the list, but it's always like number 12. And I'm like, well, I'm not dying anytime soon, so I'll get to that.
Glenn makes a great point in the chat room. He's saying they've been discussing, what happens. Like, he has a very successful podcast network, and he is the center of a lot of the activity. I think you have to do some thinking. Like, hey, okay, what happens one day? And I think you have to think like, okay, what happens one day when I can't show up anymore? And where are all my passwords? Like, where are all the really important things for people to be able to get to the files? Who's going to know where, have you written down your show, production checklist? Is it somewhere where people can find it so that they can reproduce it if they need to? Have you asked somebody? Like, Dave, I've never talked about this. What would happen if one morning I call in sick, and never come back? Is there a plan for that? Now, in our case, it'd be much more detrimental if that was you. You would just be able to find another co-host. You own this.
Yeah, but
but the other way around, what would I do? Like, if one day you call in
that's true.
sick, right? We've never shared. Like, I don't know how to get into the stuff. And maybe we should. I think it's just a good question. Like, have you thought of? And I feel like we've done a couple death shows recently, which is terrible. But it's good things to think about. Like, hey, what are we going to do if somebody calls in sick?
Yeah, because you never plan on it, and especially we were talking earlier about the cold weather. All it takes is a little black ice and fall down, hit your head on the curb, and that's the end of that,
Yeah, that's you're referring to the diet guy that happened to it starts with a P. It was real popular for a while. It was all what was his name?
Not paleo. It was Dr. Oh man,
what was that diet plan? Atkins.
Yeah,
Atkins doesn't start with P. I guess it starts with an A. So I was thinking of Parkinson's, but he slipped on a curb, hit his head, was gone. Like. You just never know. So it's probably in your planning. I think there's two things that we don't plan enough for. One is we don't plan for the inevitable, right? And I'll just say we don't plan when we have to call in permanently sick. And two, is I don't know if we plan enough for our own success. Where am I at today? What happens if this thing goes viral? What happens if this thing, your problems change drastically when you go from 1,000 downloads to 100,000 downloads per episode. Your problems with customers, your problems with your listeners, the trolls, the negative feedback, like, are you prepared to see that kind of growth? It doesn't mean you have to think about it all the time, but I think you should have a plan to say, hey, if I hit 100,000, here's how I'm going to do things differently, and be ready for that so you're not struggling in the moment.
Yeah, I guess you have to think about things like, when do I hire maybe a virtual assistant? Or, we've talked about this before. If there's any money involved and there's people involved, you need to figure out, how are you going to split that up? Who pays what? That whole 9 yards. Trying to think what else would change, I guess, if you got popular. Because on one hand, you're like, well, I'm not going to change the show. That's why I'm
advertisers. Like, okay, so now what's your relationship to your advertisers, and how important is your back catalog at that point? And can you remonetize your back catalog? Like, if you have a show, it's 1,000 and you go to 100,000 and let's just say you've been podcasting for 2 years, and you're weekly, you've got 100 new shows for people. How do you reintroduce your audience to those 100 shows, creatively without spamming them? And do you come up with some kind of new ad revenue for it? Because you may be able to insert, if you're using dynamic ad insertion, or if you're right. I mean, there's some options there. I think it's good to think through them. That they don't make sense at 1,000, but they start making sense at 100,000.
Yeah, that's true. And I guess if we don't dream big, we're
if you're not, I think you got to kind of aim for that. I mean, I think you have to kind of think through. I think in the tech world, and for the shows that I do on the tech side, I think our target, Laporte pretty much sets a standard for a lot of those tech shows, and they're 250 to 500,000 an episode. That's kind of what he pulls in on that. And I kind of think, I have to start thinking through, can my host provider handle that? Do I need to think about, again, my community, which today is pretty small and pretty manageable, my YouTube community in particular. But I've seen YouTube communities. I follow this couple, Jesse and Alyssa, and they're doing a debt-free house out in Idaho, and it's off grid. It's super popular right now. They have 310,000 subscribers or something like that to their YouTube channel, right? They're making bank. You have to change the way they're starting to change the way they make videos, because the advertising sections in them are so important, right? And you're going to get approached by vendors who now want their stuff. And who are you going to say yes to? And who are you going to say no to? And do you have a media kit available for them when they start asking? And do you have rates? And are you prepared? Are those rates scalable? In other words, if it goes from 1,000 to 100,000, will your rate sheet scale out? You may never get there, but have you thought through it? And
Yeah.
I think that's an important exercise.
Yeah, there's I was listening to a show this week, and they were kind of talking about that sometimes we are like our own worst enemy, and we kind of, our limiting thoughts kind of get in our own way. And the guy was like, now, he goes, now, before I say this, I'm not a fan of the what was that thing called? The Secret. You know, the power of the law of attraction, where if I just think about $1 million, I will fart it tomorrow. He goes, I do think there are times that we can actually achieve things that you don't think you can, but you don't know because you don't try, because you keep telling yourself, oh, nobody will do that. And sometimes you got to do that. Glenn has a great point. Glenn the Geek from Horse Radio Network. He says, we just signed our biggest sponsor and have to hire someone just to handle that account. Yeah. That's a cool problem to have. But sponsors are a lot of work. I've only had a few over the years. I actually turned one. In fact, Danny Osmond is like, hey man, anytime, like I'll write more checks if you want them. And I just had a weird situation where more people knew things about my sponsor than they did in the School of Podcasting. And I'm like, I'm doing something wrong here. And, but even that, because I didn't want my sponsor to be boring. So every week I try to hit the same bullet points, but in a different way. Because I didn't want to do like, and we'll be back right after this. And then, you insert the same thing you recorded last week. I just did not want to do that. And so it was more time. And then it was the reporting of how many downloads you had in a certain period and signing contracts and all that other fun stuff. It's a little more work. It's one of those things. It's not where you're like, I'm just going to keep doing my show and now I'm going to get paid for it. It's like, no, you're going to keep doing your show and all this other stuff to make sure that, they're happy, you're happy. And it's one of those things where, in some cases, people will give you 3 minutes of material to cover in 30 seconds. Yeah. That's always fun. So
I think the negativity in your audience will increase as your numbers increase, and I think it's exponential. I think the real popular ones, man, I've read those YouTube comments. You almost have to make a decision not to read your own YouTube comments, or in my case, I approve them all, so I just delete the ones I don't like. It's my right. I'm not going to put them out there. I don't need negativity. We do both at work and my own that way. We're just not gonna kind of put up with it. And so I censor all comments. It gets nuts and it's stupid. And you do not, trust me, everybody thinks like, oh, I can handle it. No, you can't. Most people are not designed to handle that kind of negativity. You got to be ready for it.
I had a thing happen over the past month, and it was really annoying, where somehow I got added to a bunch of newsletters that I did not sign up for. And I would go from, I don't know, I probably wake up and have 50 emails in my inbox, of which about 7 are something that really pertains to me. Some of them are like, here's your, update from so and so. Most of it's just like, here's my, what's the one? Here's your Medium update. Okay, whatever. I'm not reading that. So a lot of delete. But somehow I got on a bunch of people's newsletters, and I would wake up and have like 300 emails in my inbox. That was not fun. And I just had to keep going through and unsubscribe. So I don't know who did that to me or somehow or whatever, but it was, that was something that I was like, man, if I ever got to this situation, it's nasty. John has a great question. What percentage of podcasters are making money from their podcasts, but not using the CPM advertising model? And are we, as podcasters, catering to too much the great CPM model? I heard a great phrase this week. It's not even new, but I heard it. I was like, that's good. Where people are racing to the bottom. I think it was on the Spreaker live show, where all this CPM stuff, I mean, not to throw them under the bus, but, and Rob Greenlee very much has said, this is not going to work for people with a small audience. I've been playing with Spreaker's dynamic ad insertion, where they'll do, Home Depot and the one insurance people, Progressive, things like that.
Geico.
0.0002 cents. So 3 zeros and a 2. And if I had 10,000 downloads, okay, maybe, but that's, and that's just where I'm like, okay, well, that's why this doesn't work. So I would love to know how many people are doing that. And then I'm just sad. I never will forget the guy at Podcast Movement that said it's better than a poke in the eye. And I'm like, well, it's your podcast. You can do what you want, but I don't know.
Emily's asking, did you just do a dynamic ad experiment?
I did. That's with Spreaker.
Okay. That's what you're referring to.
Yeah. If I go over to, that's with the Alexa Cast show. Let me see if I can find my.
What's your downloads on the Alexa Cast?
It is. I'm trying to find. Oh, I have to click on my name. I'm like, I can't find my wall because I looked at my December numbers. Come on, Facebook update. I had like 1,000 downloads. It's not much. It's like well, I shouldn't say it's not much, but it's like 300 downloads an episode. Here we go. December, I made $2.95 on 1,800 downloads. So it turned out to be 0.00163612. So basically 0.0002. Yeah. So, and I mean, I've had, and again, it's, on one hand, it is better than a poke in the eye, but I personally don't want to submit my own. And those are all pre-rolls. Those are like the first thing you hear is my advertiser, not me. And the other thing that's kind of interesting, and to their credit, they're trying to match your sponsor to, basically where you are and things of that nature. So I had, on January 1st, I had 281 downloads, of which 111 of those had ads. So that's a fill rate of 39%. On January 4th, I had 48% were filled, but it's not like every single episode has an ad. They try to make sure it fits the right person or whatever they're going by, what the criteria is to add an ad or not. But I'm making anywhere from 16 cents a day to nothing. So on today, I had 36 requests, 36 downloads. 4 of those had ads in them. And I made, according to this, 0. Because again, it's 0.0001. So I haven't made enough to, 4 downloads is not enough to make a penny at this point. So it is what it is. And that's fine. My little experiment, because that's what I did it for. One of the things I want to do this year is update More Podcast Money, the book I wrote, because it doesn't even mention Patreon in the book because it's 4 years old, I think. So I want to update that. I wanted some real data on that. That's also why I took a sponsor last year, because I knew I wanted to do this. Actually, I wanted to do this last year. And so now I have some real numbers to report. The fun thing is with the sponsor thing, in my case, it was Emerald City Productions. I cannot say how much I made. So I can just hint that it was less than this, but more than that kind of thing. But
I think, Dave, I think in this space, though, I think it's important that as a podcaster, you stay close to it. You don't have to use it. Just stay close to it, because I think it is going to get better. I've been doing a lot of cryptocurrency work lately, and that for years was a dog. Like, everybody laughed at people who were doing cryptocurrency, and like, if you mine Bitcoin, it was like, oh, you're an idiot. They're worth nothing. Well, over the last year, some things have changed, and that market has matured. And I think I made this in our 2018 predictions. I think this year someone's going to figure it out and how to do it right. I think we're doing it wrong in some ways. It's just not productive for the average podcaster. I think someone's going to figure out how to get it right, and it's going to work. And when it does, you're going to want to be there when it happens. So keep a close eye on this monetization from folks like Spreaker and some of these other companies that are doing it. You don't have to use it. If it feels dirty to do it to your audience, don't. But keep an eye on it, right? I think it's really, really important when it does hit. I was fortunate enough on the cryptocurrency side to be close enough to it when it really started moving. I got ahead of the wave a little bit. Man, it's really paid off. I think that same analogy can work well in the podcasting. Don't play catch up for it. Keep your eye on it. If it does move, you jump on it if you want to use it. If you don't. You don't have to. But I would watch this space. I think it's really interesting. I think some folks, this merger between Blog Talk Radio and Spreaker, those guys are going to work pretty hard to make that work.
They're announcing something at Podfest in February, which is literally right around the corner. It's a month away. So I'll be interested to see. And Rob was saying it's going to be interesting. It's not, nobody's dying, nobody's getting killed, but I think they've kind of figured out here's how we're going to synergize. And so I'm looking forward to that. Craig says sponsors didn't work for him. He's going to promote things, his own products. That really is the best way. And it's kind of funny because so many people,
way. It is a way.
Well, this is why I say it's the best way.
Okay.
I had a sponsor, I think, for 3 months. I sold one podcasting in 6 weeks. I make more than I did in 3 months. Now that's my highest ticket item, but you know, if I've got an audience that likes me and wants to work with me, done deal, you know. Yeah. So and even with that,
my best one isn't like my best, most profitable is a sponsor. And it works out. It works really well because we've matched, you know, and we were talking about this in the chat room earlier, just full disclosure, LastPass is a big sponsor of Home Gadget Geeks, but they're a great sponsor. They fit our model. They're for geeks. My show is about geeks. Mm-hmm. So it's a super good fit. They have been sponsors now for 3 years and they just write a check every year. It works great. Which
is awesome because this goes back to my favorite answer in podcasting. It depends.
Right.
It really depends. Yeah. It's like, so that makes sense for me because I have this rather high ticket item. The other thing I found out with that is I had people that would go over and look at the price of podcasting in 6 weeks and go, ooh, it's a little out of my price, and then sign up for the school podcasting. I'm like, I should have done this a while ago.
Yeah, you have to have that down sale, right? You always have to have that one like, okay, this is the premium, but then we've got this one down here. It's more of a self-service model. But yeah, and that's certainly the model I have with LastPass is not CPM based, right? It is different. Yeah. And I don't think CPM is necessarily dead. I don't
think it's dead at all. Yeah, I just don't think it's, I think it's to me
always, go ahead. Sorry.
It's bottom of the food chain. I would not start there. I would try to find,
it's harder for the podcasters that have lower numbers. I think that's true. It's just hard and it doesn't make a lot of sense. And so we struggle with it for those podcasters that are getting those numbers. It's a smaller percentage. CPM makes a lot of sense for those. And when you can get those numbers and negotiate with those advertisers that way, based on the numbers, makes a lot of sense. So yeah, I hate to make a blanket statement and say CPM is bad because it's not. There's some situations when it's fantastic. You just have to be in the right situation.
And you're right. So who was I heard a show they're talking about, there's some sort of podcast for like neurosurgeons, and they got a huge advertising deal from a company that had a really big wallet, but B, because their show was so niche, they're like, I'll pay anything to get my product in front of those people. So again, going back to the it depends kind of situation.
In a niche situation like you're talking about, CPM can actually be to your favor because cost of acquisition, right? In a marketing, this is all marketers understand. What is my cost of acquisition? What does it take for me to acquire a customer? Oftentimes they're used to paying $10, $15, $20 to bring someone in. If you can charge them $1 or $2 or $5, all of a sudden, because we always think of CPM in the sense of cents, but in a hyper niche, you may have such a target rich environment that your CPM numbers can be so much higher. And so instead of thinking of it like pennies, think of it like dollars. You got to prove it. But if you got the mojo and you got that engaged audience and you can produce results, you can charge much higher CPMs with them. And in that case, I think it's a really good model because it's pay for performance. You get, it's a click, you get a result, you get paid. I think that's not a bad model. If you can get the CPM numbers right, just don't settle for a nickel, unless that's the right number.
Well, I always worry about, the dorking it out show, and I'm just making that up. So if there actually is a dorking it out show, I'm just making that up.
I'm buying the URL right now.
Where it's Danny and Jenny and Skip, and they just talk about movies and things that are going on in social, and they're having a blast and it's great. And then they get a sponsor. I'm like, that's so not niche. Now I could be wrong. Maybe there's some sort of like Dorks or Us kind of store that would really fit their their thing. But I always wonder about that. How do you take something that's a really broad topic and then monetize it? And that's why I'm like, it depends. So
it really does. It depends on the model, and you can have some small shows that use some of the bigger shows techniques to get it done. It just depends how good of a salesperson you are. I think that's another key element. If you're a podcaster and you're a terrible salesman or person, let's say salesperson, not to be sexist there. If you're a terrible salesperson, you better hire one, because
dude, Zig Ziglar had a book, something like Bad Salesmen Have Skinny Kids.
Or they're skinny themselves, one of the two.
It's pretty funny.
My insurance guy is a big dude. I know he's doing well. Let's just put it that way. So there's a question there about affiliate merchandising that always comes in. That's another way, right? Affiliate marketing can be great.
With
another great niche one, right? If you have a niche and you can do affiliate, it's awesome.
If your audience is buying stuff, School of Podcasting, I make 4% or whatever it is, 5% every time somebody buys an ATR 2100, and a microphone stand and this and that. And it's not paying my mortgage, but there are months when I'm like, wow. And especially that I did nothing for besides take a bit of code and put it on a page. I think a lot of times most successful podcasters have multiple streams of income. So they have affiliate, they might have a sponsor, they're selling their own product. And then, banner ads or whatever they're doing or things like that. I think it's always, even Pat Flynn, he's a huge affiliate guy, but he also has the Smart Podcast Player. He gets paid big bucks for speaking, but that's also
actually where the money is, by the way.
Oh, that's
speaking is a cash cow. If you really want to talk about where the money is and you can get it, that's the speaking circuit is huge, and you got to that's a tough one. That's not everybody. That's almost like hitting the NBA,
Yeah, it is. And everybody, the more I look into that, everybody's like, you have to almost get an agent, like a speaker agent who works with these big, events that they go to these people and go, we need a speaker to talk about such and such and such and such. And they go out and, because it is that's another one that sounds great. A lot of work to get in there. I mean, I'm now working on my presentation for PodFest, and I've got a big presentation for Social Media Marketing World. And I really started working on those back in December, but even that was just, knowing the right people. A lot of that is timing. Man, it's just being in the right place at the right time. Is basically how it.
No. It's a tough one to get into. When we think about Amazon affiliate or any affiliate link, I did a calculation when it was working. Like, I've been booted from Amazon twice. I'm just too aggressive with it, and that's okay. But when I was doing Amazon, I did a calculation of cost per 1,000 listeners. Not cost, but gain per 1,000 listeners. And for me, it worked out about just a little over 200. I think it was maybe like 205.37 or something like that. So for every 1,000 listeners, I would see about $200 in affiliate sales each month. An average, right? And that's so for me, Dave. One of the things is podcasters were always hesitant to advertise or to pay for advertising, because it's like putting money into a bucket and then lighting it on fire. You really never know if it's going to work or not. And so as podcasters, we hold up. But if I had a number and I said for every 1,000 listeners, it would turn into $200 in profit, all of a sudden things start to make sense from an advertising perspective. So if I can spend $10 to make 100, you make that decision. You say yes every single time, right? I'm going to give you $10, Dave. You're going to give me $100. Yes, right? No one says no to that. But advertising is super scary because oftentimes we don't completely understand the ROI on the ads. And if you can start putting metric numbers like I did to that, even for Amazon affiliate, right? I measured it over 6 months. I had this kind of number in mind. If you can do that, then all of a sudden it makes your advertising numbers go, well, okay, if I can acquire 500 new listeners, that means another $50 in sales. So should I pay more than 50 for that? Probably not. But should I spend 5 or 10 for it? Yeah, maybe. Again, it's different for everybody, but numbers, it makes a difference when you start measuring and you start making those numbers based on measurements.
Well, I know I did the same thing on my Logical Weight Loss podcast. I love Fitbit stuff. I own one. I use it. Every time somebody buys one, I typically make $9.
Right here, right
And,
there. Yeah.
And between Fitbit and Amazon stuff, I did the same thing. How many downloads did I get? And I was just counting the numbers from those episodes, not my back catalog. Just like how many, I've been promoting this for a month. I've made X amount of money. How many downloads did I get from those episodes? And it was like $50 CPM. And I'm like, if you have the right product and the right audience, affiliate stuff can be great. And Roy asked,
rock it.
Roy asked in the chat room, is becoming an affiliate a good idea? I'm a new podcaster. I was thinking about becoming an Amazon affiliate. I know there is, because when I got booted, speaking of getting booted off Amazon, I started an Amazon under, I think, Ask the Podcast Coach, my Gmail account on that. Well, I don't use that anymore because I started another one. So I basically have 2 Amazon affiliates, and I'm not really using that one. And they kind of have politely asked me saying, you're not sending any traffic our way. We're probably going to cancel your account. So I don't know what the, minimum amount of traffic I have to send them before they boot me off, but because that's stuff that, that's things they have to track.
Yeah, but they're pretty generous. They give you a lot of time. What they don't like is the overtly spamming when you, like, if you put a link on Twitter, they will ban you. It's just, it's automatic. Like, it's not even a person anymore. They are combing Twitter. And if you blast it out, and don't ask me how I know that, but if you blast it out on Twitter, it's gone. I was just too aggressive with my Amazon affiliate links.
Yeah. And it's what I've heard from some big names like Jay Moore. He says, if you go to my website and click on the Amazon banner, none of this like schoolofpodcasting.com/Amazon, that's against the terms. Just read the terms and don't try to get funny with it at all.
Yeah, don't work it. They've been around a while. They've been doing this affiliate thing longer than anybody else. They know how to stop cheaters. And they have very strict rules. So make sure you're adhering to all of it. Trust me. Now, what's funny, I got booted from the US, but I still have a UK affiliate link that still works. So every month I get a $25, it's not literally, but it's $25, about $25 a month from my UK sales. So apparently the UK and the US stores are not talking to each other because I didn't get booted. I didn't get booted from the UK one. So that one's still working.
Well, speaking of making money, another way you can make money is through crowdsourcing. So it's the first of the month. So I always like to thank everybody who goes out to askthepodcastcoach.com/awesome. So that would include Max Trescott of aviationnewstalk.com, Joshua Rivers from podcastingexperiments.com, Glenn the Geek Hebert, hope your ribs are doing good, buddy, at horseradionetwork.com, Frank Miller, Jay Cleveland Payne at jclevelandpayne.net, Sean Park from BeYourOwnNerd.com. We're going to talk about the Zoom L12 in a second because Sean sent that in. Nick Suberling at CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com. Barry Kessler from BarryKessler.com. I think I already mentioned, that was Frank Black Miller, MD. I got him confused with Frank Brill, as well as Dale Henninger, Michael Ray, Rob Griffiths from bedtime.fm/storytime, as well as bedtimefm.peace out. Doug Salamone from becominglimitless.org. You know what? I want to do tangents here. Doug is a guy that started multiple podcasts, and he said, look, I found my voice. This is what's really, so sometimes starting a podcast, it takes a couple. Becominglimitless.org. Corner Talk, that's my buddy Darren Dake at cornertalk.com. Jeffrey Hallish from Podnuts. You can find that at podnutz.com. Some guy named Jim Collison from theaverageguy.tv.
I need to give more money so my name will move up on the list.
Joe Taylor from onfaithedge.com. Troy Heinrichs from the blacklistexposed.com. Mark W. King from markwking.com. Cauldron's Crypt from cauldronscrypt.com. Cale Nelson down there in Georgia from hamradio360.com. Kim Slusher from distractedlifepodcast.com. Jeremy Dennis from Transmissions Podcast Network. Well, hold on. Let me fix that again. Transmissionspodcast.com, where you will find the Transmissions Podcast Network. Corey from ivnv.com. Haven't heard much from Corey lately.
Yeah, they've been busy. His small business really has been taking off.
He's taken off. Yep. Yeah. A couple more here. I need his real name. Jonathan, because we were talking about this earlier. I don't have the sheet I need. From weeklyawesome.com podcast, creepykingdom.com. Okay, hold on. this guy, Mask Me. I need his name and I need his website. But thank you for being a sponsor. Paul from fightingthroughpodcast.co.uk. Felix Montalara. Mike Moody from MrRobotPodcast.com. Is that show still on the air? Jeffrey Kiefling from GenealogyShowcase.com. It's fun reading really small stuff. Slept in Government Class. You can find that at sleptinclass.com. Barb over at anchor.fm.barbtusa. Alan Palmer, I again say, gentlemen, if I'm not reading your website, it's because I've asked you and you haven't given me one. The one and only, you know her, you love her, you can't get enough of her, except you can't find the soundbite. That's right. The soothing sounds of Emily Prokop at the storybehindpodcast.com, as well as, ePodcast. Emily, what's your website? I'll plug that in a second. Gary from beekeepingpodcast.com. David Wilson from Ottawa Works. The Seahawkers podcast, which you can find at seahawkerspodcast.com. Craig from Ingleus Podcast. I love Craig. Craig and his wife have like the coolest picture. I don't know if you guys can see that. That's Craig.
Right next to Steve Stewart.
That's it. Josh Liston from the tpsguy.org and Steve Sleeper from earn.show, Cody Saison, and I think there's one other person that just signed up because I just said, I forgot to update my spreadsheet. And I believe that is Jason Curtis is a new subscriber. Or new.
Thanks,
patron.
guys.
So thank you very much.
Dave,
that helped pay for Bernie's death this morning.
Yikes, don't go there. Here's what's amazing to me. Like 2, 3, 4 years ago, whenever we started this thing, we're almost on 200. So that makes it almost 4 years. We started this thing as kind of goofing around. And it turned into a podcast. Let's play with
Blog Talk Radio and see how bad it sucks.
And then we kept doing it, and we have an audience of 20 that show up every single Saturday morning to be a part of it. We're your Saturday morning cartoons is what we hear. And then that Patreon list is super impressive. Like every time you read that, I'm like, holy crap. First of all, people are paying for this thing. And then secondly, there's a bunch of them and I'm super impressed. So I want to say thanks for supporting Dave on this. If you're new to the show, I'm just the co-host, color guy. I told Dave a long time ago, this is his show. He owns it all. I really don't want to have to deal with the taxes. So we appreciate I don't. I've had such a messy tax couple years. I appreciate you guys supporting Dave. That's super important to me, and it makes me feel good that you guys do it. So thank you.
And Joe asked, are there other pictures? Yes, there's a bunch here. Let's see. There's Adam, Matt Rafferty from the Story Behind podcast. Bill Hutchison, who you've heard on.
Did you put the names on the bottom?
I did that. Yeah.
Nice.
People at Walgreens.
Where'd you go to? Walgreens. Okay.
Yeah. I go in, put them on a thing.
Why are you taking pictures of people?
The one and only Randy Cantrell.
Oh, that's a good one, Randy.
Yeah. This is Jessica Rhodes. That's why we say she's shopping. She's like, here's that. Jason, I believe it's Seiko. It's at work. Kim Mills in the car. Oh, Kim is on the floor.
By the way, send your pictures into Dave if you haven't yet.
Yeah, Dave at schoolofpodcasting.com. Yeah. Tom is a FedEx driver, so he's got plenty of time to do that. This guy's got, Jeremy Dennis. He's got the cool layout.
Ooh, that looks good. That's a good looking picture too. Fran
Wicks is she's got her dogs. Yep, she's got dogs in the background. That's always fun.
That's a good looking studio. That's nice.
Yeah. Darwin Dave with his thermos from his dad. That's cool.
Oh man, that's great.
Here's Max up in the speaking of Max Trescott up in the plane listening to Dave. Everybody's podcast fan, the one and only.
Oh yeah, Tim.
Yeah.
Tim, love Tim. I still got his card sitting here on my desk.
This I thought was cool. This is Gabe DeMaio, and he does a show with his kid. So I was like, that's awesome. The one and only, speaking of Doug Simon.
There's Doug. Dougie Fresh, as I like to call him.
I believe that is a Shih Tzu, which makes my heart go pitter patter. And then Rick Sizemore is a great guy.
Maybe a dog is next in your.
Somebody asked me, am I going to get a pet? And I actually thought about this. Anytime something bad happens to me, I learned this from Michael Hyatt. Look at it and go, what does this enable me to do? What does this enable me to do? Not
having a pet means you don't have to come home.
And I thought, man, if I wanted to, if I bought a good, hardy laptop, and depending on how hard I can beat a Wi-Fi from Verizon, I could travel around the world and work, and because all I need is Wi-Fi to work and a laptop, because I work for Libsyn, and I don't have any plants to water. I don't have a cat to feed anymore. I'm like, aside from, I would just stop my mail because I have a really, really tiny mailbox, and just make sure that anything that I get paper bills are now electronic. I could just travel around and that'd be fun. So I don't know that I'm going to do that, but
give it some time. I would say give it 30 days. It's like with any tragedy or any major event, don't make any big decisions in the next 30 days. You're going to go through some grief. Just let it be. Don't make big decisions. I see a lot of people do that and they regret it. So just give it 30 days. If you're going to get a dog or another cat, they'll be there in 30 days if that's the right thing to do.
See, this is the best time when it's like 2 degrees outside and you see people outside going, come on, Fluffy, take your dump so I can go back inside. I'm like, you know what? I don't need a dog right now.
No.
I don't miss that. So
we have the best cat in the world, and we can go for days, and the neighbors will come by and feed him. And so it's a perfect scenario. But I look at Bernie and I kind of keep waiting. I'm thinking, oh my God, this is what I have to deal with when, because when they go, it's always messy at the end. So you're right. You have some freedom. I think the same thing is true when you're doing some things in your podcast and you're not doing any of them well. You probably got too many things going on. And so removing a few of them and then not adding some new ones, but doing those things that you're not doing particularly well, kind of focusing on what needs to be focused on. At the beginning of the year, that might be a good idea to take an inventory of all the things that you do and then say, which are my least productive? And can I just whack some of those out and then not replace them with things? Like have some actual margin in your life. I mean, you're going to get a bunch of margin, Dave. Enjoy the margin. Do not fill it with things right away.
Yeah. What's hilarious is I think everybody has one of these people in their lives. My oldest now ex-stepdaughter is one of those. She's all about animal rescue, and she's literally sending me pictures of kittens. Oh, no. I'm like, no, thank you. I love you, but no.
Not yet. 30 days. Tell them 30 days. I'm on a 30-day hiatus.
But I wanted to go back to because we love to talk about gear. And I'm glad that John is in the chat room. I'm from man, my brain is it's Audio Editing Solutions, right, John?
He'll throw the link in the chat room.
Yeah. There's a thing called a Zoom L12, and Sean from BeYourOwnNerd.com said, "What do you think of this? It's a 12-channel USB mixer, and it's when I see it, I was like, where was this when I was in a band? It records to an SD card, right? Like you plug the SD card right into the mixer. And every review, Ray has a cool review, Ray Ortega, Steven from, which I think is the one I put in the chat room, Steven from betterpodcasting.com, Steven Johnru. Steven is the guy I like it may be a fluke, but Steven got a bad one. Like it had this weird thing that occasionally would like just make a clicking noise in his recordings. And so Steven had sent it back and they said, oh yeah, we're sorry. We'll send it to us. And then they sent it back and it's still not fixed. Now that may be the exception, not the rule. But I know John had one and said he sent it back. And everybody here says, man, the good news is this thing does everything. Like I think you can have like 5 mixed minuses going at one time. But I think for the average podcaster, this is like buying a tank when you need a BB gun. It's just so overkill. I have a guy right now that I might send this to him. He's doing a video show with, I think, a call-in. He's trying to do the whole phone-in thing. And he's got, I think, 2 co-hosts. And he needs like boatloads of mixed minuses. I might send him this. But even that, Steven Johnru, his review goes over all the quirky stuff. Like the fact that this makes no sense to me. When you hit the mute button, you can have 6 different mixes. But when you hit the mix button, it mutes them in all the mixes except the recording one. And I'm like, what kind of crap is that? And all these weird things where if you hit this button, it looks like, there's a learning curve. Now, Ray and Steven both said that once you get over that learning curve and you understand that, oh, I have to move this slider to make the little light blink and the blah, blah, blah. And you do the hokey pokey and you turn yourself around, that you actually like it. but it's that learning curve because it's not like your mixer where you turn up a knob and things go up and you turn it down and things go down. So I did find this is something I have an email in, and they've said they will send me one. I've just got to fill out some paperwork. There's a you do a mix minus with a Zoom H6. That is a great question. I think in most cases, from what I've seen with USB stuff, it happens automatically. I don't know, because I know anytime I've ever done anything with a USB, it somehow knows that this sound is coming from the computer and not to send it back. I know I spent a long time with the One Mix Pre thing that I was looking, how do I do this? And finally it just dawned on me that it just did it automatically. I found this little unit. It's and I definitely want to play with this because the L12 is like $600, which again, you're getting, it's a huge mixer. This thing is from PreSonus. It's called a Studio Live AR8. You get 4 inputs for microphones, but it's the thing I like about it is the built-in recorder. So you've got a little, so you don't have to have the H5 or the H6 or things like that. So if it's something where you're never going to do portable, you don't need it to be portable. That's where I was like, I might like to play with that. But I don't know. To me, my initial thought was way too many buttons.
It's $600.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's a nice, but it is nice gear. I mean, it looks nice. It's built well. I have been a big fan on the Mackie side, and I just think Mackie makes great little boards for podcasters. And the Mackie, I have the FX12 at work. I have the FX8 here at home. They're rugged and durable. If you're moving them around, they're great for a DJ. Mackie mixers are awesome because they're super durable. If you're going to double, I know a lot of podcasters double as DJs too. That seems to be a pretty common, common thing. So I've been a big fan of those, and they're not the cheapest. Like everybody, if they go cheap, they want a Behringer, right?
Right.
And then Mackie's kind of in the middle, and then you got some specialty products like this that are a little more expensive. So yeah, it looks good. I think you got to have a really good use case before you drop 600 bones on something like this.
Yeah, because I mean that's the thing. Like I really wanted that Mix Pre 3, and I think it was $600, and it was just after a while I was like, you know what, I can, is it really that hard to press record on an H5 that's already sitting here for free? I paid for it. It's not free, but
a lot of guys and gals wanted they love that idea, the magical separate. Everybody's on a separate channel, and to be honest with you, in my editing scheme, I don't care. Like I think it just isn't worth it. I don't need that much perfection that I can. If somebody talked over somebody else, I can shift that down or whatever. So I'm not. For me, man, I can't even. My process takes too long as it is. If I really edited the audio based on channel, oh my God, I can't imagine. It'd be awful.
That's it. That's where. That's where. That's it. And that's where I think I differ from people because they're like, well, if you have each individual mix, like each individual track, now I can, maybe this person needs a little bass, this person needs a little treble, and I can make sure that not only do they have the right volume, but everybody has the same kind of EQ. And I'm like, I don't have time for that.
Hey, if that's what you want to do. No, I'm not making fun of it. Some people want that. And so spend your money on that gear if that's what you want. I'm just not built that way. So I prefer for me, huge processing and Auphonic. That's just drop it into Auphonic, let the magic happen. It transcribes it for me. I am done. So that's kind of my magic.
Now what John does, because John does the She Podcast Show, and in the same way that we talk over each other, so do Jess and Elsie. So what John will do is he will have separate tracks and he'll figure out who made the best point and stop them from talking over each other. And I'm like, that's kind of cool.
No, that is cool. That is cool. No, it's interesting. Like he's getting paid for that. So that makes that changes the motivation in what you want from a track perspective. I do some consulting as well around recording. I have one customer that I help long time. We've been customers for 4 years, and they want it a little better, and they're paying me, and that's different. Than my own stuff. It's like, oh man, I got so many chores to do, and you're doing that value proposition, wife acceptance factor, because you got your chores done, work on the podcast, and be in the doghouse.
Right.
Which one do you choose? So it's just a lot different. I can justify it when I tell Sarah I'm getting paid for it. than it's spending that time doing it than when I'm not, although that doesn't matter here. But it is one of those things where I think if you're getting paid for it, if you're one of these consultants and you're getting paid for it, yeah, all of a sudden $600 makes sense. You're like, yeah, really good gear, best quality, be able to wow the customer, and they're paying for it. Shoot, for most in 2 or 3 gigs, it's paid for, right? And so yeah, that's when $600 makes sense. If it's a hobby and you're not getting any income out of your podcast, that might be a little steep.
I did the same thing when I was a musician. I had I had decent guitars and stuff, and I had a decent amp. And then when the band started making money, I was like, we could sound better if I bought this amp and it does this and that. And it was probably $900, but after 4 or 5 gigs, it paid for itself. I bought, much like the L12, I had I forget the model. It was from Roland. It was a 24 track recorder. The thing was the size of my desk, and it was, I think, $1,500 when I bought it. And this was not a USB thing. It was a standalone recorder, 24 track. And it was awesome. And I would go out and record bands live, and then able to make a pretty decent mix on that. And that was one that's like, I had to get that by the wife, and I'm like, honest, this will pay for itself, And so, because we did a home improvement, and I thought one of the things we could do to improve the home was to buy a 24 track recorder. And so she's like, all right, I trust you. And then so it was like, hey, see this check? Here's the first one. This is going to pay for that. But that is something that you definitely need to. I don't know. I hear about guys that sneak things into houses and things like that. I'm like, that usually comes back to bite you in the butt.
It really does. Yeah, I know. You should.
Wait, where did that come from? And you're like, oh, it's that old thing. It's been here for years. Yeah. No, I don't think so.
I'm getting ready to drop a little cash on the cryptocurrency side, and it would be super easy for me just to slide that in. And we went out to dinner last night, and I said, hey, I just want to tell you, I'm going to do something crazy, and I want you to be fully aware I'm going to do it. And we kind of had that conversation. I think podcasting can be the same way. I haven't dropped big money on equipment in a long time because I think I bought quality to begin with. So David asked a question, David 50 out there to ask a question, what's a good starter device? Yeah. I think you got to be careful. This is where you can buy cheap equipment, really cheap equipment, and you maybe get a year or 2 out of it. Yeah. And you'll wish you want the next step up.
Why don't we cover that in post show?
Yeah, we got a few other questions about net neutrality and copyright as well. We didn't get to, so we'll cover those in the post show.
What's coming up on the averageguy.tv?
Yeah, we're doing a vintage tech series with guys that are just kind of sharing their vintage tech. So we looked at phones and video games and camcorders from the 70s to the 90s, and that isn't posted yet, but it will be over at the averageguy.tv.
That'll be fun.
It's super fun. Yeah, it's super
vintage camcorders were hilarious.
What's interesting, like these phones are $1,000, right? Let's just say this isn't the X, but let's say it was. It's $1,000. Camcorders in their day, $1,000. This was $1,000 in 1980 dollars.
Yeah,
people were dropping them to get those camcorders like crazy.
I think I paid $700 for mine, but my brother was having a kid. He couldn't afford one, and I'm like, I'm getting a camera, man. I'm like, they only stay little for a little bit.
Yeah.
But that's what's always funny now. There are apps that you like, should I pay $5? And I'm like, that was a $300 piece of, software 6 years ago. So
you've already wasted more time thinking about spending $5 than just spending it and getting the value out of it.
Yeah. So on the School of Podcasting this week, it's episode 600, the extravaganza. So I'm going to break my format and talk about me. I basically asked my audience, what do you want to know about me? It's an interesting concept. This is definitely one of those I'm going to throw it on the wall and see if it sticks. But I've got some fun stories to share. So that'll be at schoolofpodcasting.com. We're here every Saturday. AskThePodcastCoach.com/live. Stick around for some post show.